Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I am good. You've done like a ton of campaign work for huge brands like Olay, Pop Tarts, YouTube, Google Play, T-Mobile's, Wendy's, like it goes on. So can you kind of walk us through what the flow of creating a successful campaign using different brand voices is since you have to adapt, per brand? What's that like, that process?
Absolutely. So it's a really interesting process because before you usually get money from a brand, you've pitched something to them. So you get this kind of request for, pitches, requests for proposals that you send out to them. And you want to pitch a really wide variety of stuff, but you want to make sure that you've done research into what already exists for that brand online. So not only looking at their social media accounts, obviously their Instagram, their Twitter, but also seeing what kind of campaigns have they done with other influencers and how have those campaigns done and been responded to, because the more that you can figure out what they already like, what already works for them and what doesn't work for them, it kind of gives you an edge on pitching. So, you send probably 10, 15 pitches at least. They're going to pick one or two or three, depending on the size of the campaign and how much money they're spending and all of that. And I find it's really helpful when you send those pitches to send estimated budgets that are at different levels so that they can kind of get a premium video, like a middle video, some less premium, like social content, any sort of add-ons, so that they really know what they're getting for what they're spending and that they don't have unrealistic expectations about, this is how much this is going to be, how much we would expect from you for us to make this video. Not so much how much we're going to spend on the video, because obviously you need to pay your people and get profit and all of that, but how much the company is going to cost them, the brand, to make your video. So pitching with all of those things in mind of what their budget is, what they're looking for, and then what their brand voice is going to be, and hopefully how that brand voice relates to your platform. So you want to make sure that it's hard because not every brand deal that you get is going to be a natural integration. Like, it's great when you're a food channel and you get a deal with Kraft, but a lot of the times you're a food channel and you get a deal with Audible. So it's figuring out how does your specific audience and your specific brand relate to that brand. And that's usually your way in. So I know with a lot of the things that I've done that are celebrity focused, it's really easy because it's like, oh, this celebrity specifically uses this or loves this or has this connection to this. So that's a really easy way in. With things that I've done for, like, when I was working with FBE and the React channel, it was a lot of looking at what works for us and what works online. I think In Real Life is a really good example. That's something we pitch to a lot of our gaming clients because that's something people really enjoy seeing. It's something that we're really good at making, and it's a really natural fit with any video game. So also having those sorts of known formats that you can throw out really helps too.
I like what you said about like looking at what's already worked for them. You don't have to start from scratch. You can kind of look at what's worked and what's bombed in the past. So avoid that and work off of what has already been successful, make it more successful. Speaking of success, I know that you've worked closely with Comedy Central. I love Comedy Central. They're one of my favorite networks. Can you tell me a show that might be your favorite because of how, they brand, or something that really stands out to you about a specific show on Comedy Central and why?
So I mean, hands down right now, my favorite thing on Comedy Central is The Daily Show. I think a lot of that's just kind of the world that we're living in right now. And Trevor Noah's voice is really relatable. And he does a great job of not minimizing with his comedy. He does a good job of being funny while still making a statement. And I think that's something that South Park and Broad City both did really well. In addition, I think Comedy Central does a good job of nailing this idea of, we want to say something with our comedy. We're not just being funny for the sake of being funny. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Like, everybody loves to laugh. But the reason I like those three shows so much, The Daily Show, Broad City, and South Park, is because they found a way to be really relevant and to really give their comedians a voice.
I love Broad City. I completely like binged that entire show for that exact reason though. It's like the show was hilarious, but just this idea of two female comedians like talking about things that applied to me and like making jokes about things that actually applied to me, and it was like they were in my head. But you have a good eye for these things because you have such a wide portfolio. I mean, you've worked with sketch comedy, you've worked with documentaries, you've worked on campaigns. Which of these types of is your favorite to work on, and why?
It's such a tricky question because it really depends on what I'm doing on it. As a writer, my narrative stuff has always been my favorite. I love doing sketch comedy. I love doing indie film. I mean, that's kind of like every writer is like, I just want to do narrative stuff. So that's hard. I do love that. But I have to say, doing branded stuff is a really fun challenge. And in the digital world, it's one of the few times you're working with a real budget. Obviously, the way digital works and the way that money is made on platforms like YouTube, it is very difficult to be self-sustaining without either marketing on your own or having some sort of brand financing backing. So doing those big campaigns and, working with those bigger clients, it's really rewarding in a sense of, you're making something great. You actually have the resources to make something great. But on top of that, you're figuring out how to blend things in a way that's organic and feels real to the audience. Because, the first thing a digital audience will do is just turn off your video if it doesn't feel real to them. So I think, that challenge has always been very fun to me.
What happens when you are working with a campaign and you have a budget and you aren't able to hit the mark you want to hit creatively with that budget, or something gets pulled from the budget and you have to kind of rework? Like, how does that work?
So hopefully when you've gone in with a contract that gives them a good expectation of what their budget has bought them. However, of course, things always come up in production. You need to have contingency in every single budget that you do. I personally budget 20% of if something goes wrong and we have to do a reshoot, or if equipment breaks on set and, insurance only covers part of it. It's this idea of making sure that at the end of the day, you're not going to spend more than you make. However, when you don't budget correctly, you just end up eating into your own profit. So that's one of those things that it's like, hopefully you've budgeted not only a margin of error on your budget, but also when you pitch to a brand, you're not just charging them what it costs you to make it, you're also charging what it costs to pay yourself and to be a person and to grow your channel. Like that's, a big part of what you need to think through when you're budgeting and when you're pitching. I did have one recently that I did that we had like a very unexpected reshoot situation. We had tried to save money by going with some greener hires, and we had a DIT lose like 6 hours of footage. So that was very stressful, and it was one of those things where it was like, this is our mistake. We tried to cut a corner. We just have to eat into our profit and make this work for the client, because you're not about to go to the client and be like, hi, I messed up. I need more money. So that's on you if you screw something up.
Right. Yeah. You really have to use your best judgment going into it, knowing that if you mess up, it's on you, and you have to pivot to make it work for the client at the end of the day, even if that means losing something for yourself or for your company.
Exactly. And if you've done a good job, the client's never going to know that happened.
Yeah, right. They'll never know.
Yeah.
So as a writer and as a producer, really, what advice do you have for somebody who wants to get into the same field as you, who might be a little green right now, as you're saying, or just somebody who's in it but wants to get better and things are a little crazy right now with COVID?
My number one piece of advice, no matter what you're trying to do or what part of the industry you're in, is to make your own work. I think it's really, really important to show people that even if you're not being hired, even if you're not being paid, that you still have creative vision, you still have ideas and drive and passion for this industry. The more that you can show people that you're a go-getter and that you've done stuff, the better. Also, no one's ever going to hire you if you don't have something to show that's a good example of what you've done. So, pick a script that you really like, pick a concept that you really like, and go out there and make it. And even if you're making it low budget, even if you're shooting it on your iPhone without like proper sound, you're still going to have a good example of your creative brain and of your drive. So that's always my number one thing. My big piece of advice to writers starting out is learn how to write to a budget. If you're trying to sell scripts, especially digitally, don't set them in the middle of a war. Like, don't set them someplace you can't afford, because you're just going to end up trying to figure out how to make that concept work for way less money. And nothing looks worse than an expensive video made cheap. Just make a cheap video for cheap.
Yeah.
So that's my big piece of advice for writers. And then I think my big thing for producers is you just want to get as much experience as you can and always try to go above and beyond. So if you're coming into a set, even as a PA, especially as an AP, don't just do your job. Check in with the producer and with the first AD and see, what else can I do? And make it known to people that you're interested in learning. So I know for me, if someone comes to me and says, hey, I really want to do what you want to do, I'll try to put them on a set with me in a position where they can get a good sense of what I do and how I do it. And then as I have opportunities come up that I can use somebody like that on, I'll try to put them in that. So really being honest and open with the people that you work with not in a way of like, I want to take your job, but in a way of like, I would love to learn from you. Like, I would love to be mentored by you. People are generally pretty open to that.
I love that you broke that down into the 3 different categories of the question, like overall starter advice, producer advice, writer advice. With the starter advice, I think a lot of people who I've interviewed that are producers and in the creative industry have really said the same thing, like create this work for yourself right now. It's so important. It's better to do it low budget, but show the creativity rather than just say, I can't afford to produce some high budget thing, some high res thing, so I'd rather just not do it at all. It's a great time for creatives to show what they're capable of. Actually, given the circumstances, it's like, how is your mind going to work to get yourself out of this situation? And then, with writing and producing, part of that advice can also apply to anybody in the creative field as well. Like, go above and beyond, because I'm sure where you're starting isn't where you want to end. I'm sure you want to get to a higher position. So how are you going to do that besides starting your own thing? It's going to be shadowing and learning from the people who are in that position that you want. And what I've found with creatives, especially those who work on a set, is that they're usually pretty open, as you said, to saying, hey, come along with me, like watch what I'm doing and actually immerse yourself in it, because having that mentor relationship is a huge part of success and networking. And it's all about who you know in this industry, really.
Definitely. I mean, I think network is the biggest way that you can ensure that you're going to be successful. I mean, even with, those starter projects that you're doing yourself, the more that you have other creatives that want to work on something with you, the more motivated you're going to be and the more fun you're going to have.
Yeah. And it keeps you accountable. It drives the project and the creativity as well. After going into your website a little bit, I found this blip that you had written about yourself. You said that you were a self-proclaimed nerd and a lover of Harry Potter. So I like to ask my guests a fun question, and this one really excited me. What is your Harry Potter house?
So I'm a Ravenclaw. It's kind of a funny story, though. The very first time I took the test, I got Hufflepuff. And I got Hufflepuff because I wasn't like properly reading the website and I didn't realize there were questions. I just was like picking my favorite, like, oh, this is like a pretty unicorn. This was back in college. I'm sure there were, a couple of beverages involved. And I always felt like that wasn't right. And so I did take it again a couple of years ago and I was very excited to get Ravenclaw. So I guess technically I'm a Ravenpuff, but I like being a Ravenclaw. I feel like it's a good house. So
every time I take it, I get Gryffindor and I say, I feel like they're just telling me that because that's what people want to hear. They want to hear that they're a Gryffindor. And I don't think I am. I think I'm a Ravenclaw. And so sometimes I take it and I'll be Ravenclaw. Sometimes I'll take it and I'll be Gryffindor. I think either way, I'm happy at the end of the day. When I moved out here, I wanted to go to the Wizarding World so bad. And of course, it's closed right now. And even when it opens, who knows when it's going to be safe to go and really get everything back moving again. But it's going to happen for me. I'm claiming it, and I'm going to ride the new rides, and I'm going to get some butterbeer, and it's going to be amazing.
It is absolutely going to be amazing. It's I love Wizarding World of Harry Potter. I actually live very close to there. So when it used to be open, friends and I would just go up on a Friday night and hang out at Hogsmeade.
Oh my God. That's the dream.
Awesome. Yeah. So
totally nerd out with your friends and just
drink some butterbeer. Pro tip, it's really, really great if you just put a little shot of rum in it.
I've heard that, and I've read some make your own at home recipes, and they all have some type of flavored rum in them. I feel like I need to try that.
It's a good adventure.
Quarantine's the perfect time to make new drinks at home, I feel like.
Yes, it is.
I like to end the show just on a positive note. Did you bring something to cheers to?
So a movie that I did some associate producer work on almost 5 years ago now, just got its VOD release this week. So it's called Darkness in Tenement 45. I'm really excited about it. It is actually about quarantine, but it was written years ago. And it's on Amazon Prime, iTunes, basically all the major VOD platforms.
Oh, that's awesome. Is it a dark movie? Is there a quick rundown you can give?
Yeah. So it was written by Nicole Groten, who I actually went to school with. And it is a period piece set during the Cold War times when there were concerns about pandemic. And basically a small tenement building in New York goes under quarantine and are stuck inside with each other for a long time. And then it's kind of a psychological thriller. I don't want to spoil too much of it, but a lot of really, really dark things go down with the characters' mental states as they're in quarantine.
Ooh, that sounds like it's right up my alley. I love psychological thrillers. That's my favorite genre. So I'll definitely be checking that out on Amazon Prime. Congrats on your movie. I mean, that's awesome. And
Oh,
I'm sure
yeah.
people are going to eat that up right now, especially.
It's really been exciting. So it was one that like I did very little work on right when I was first starting out, just because I knew people from school and was kind of like helping out with it. And it's really exciting to see where they've taken it and how big it's gotten since then. So it's been very
Well,
exciting.
cheers. Cheers
Thank
to
you.
that. Thanks so much for joining me today. You've been awesome to talk to, and it was great to hear your advice to writers, producers, and newbies as well.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.